The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. On today's show, we're going to visit a beautiful garden near Oronoco, Minnesota. We'll also learn about growing elderberries and making wine from them. And Chef Stephen Larson shows us what you can do with watermelon in the summer. Stay with us. Garden Connections is next. We're here at Asplin Peony Gardens, and if you remember last season we were here and we learned all about these gorgeous flowers, how to take care of them, and all the many varieties that they had available. Well, we're back again, and this time we're going to learn about elderberries. Bruce and Dawn have a whole host of bushes, and Bruce makes wine from them. We're going to learn about how that's done. Hello, Bruce. How are you? Thanks for having us back.
Yes.
So, we're going to talk about elderberries today. And these are lovely plants. They look so big and healthy, and they've got some beautiful berries on them. But let's start at the beginning. Did you plant these from bare root, or how did you get this beautiful row established?
A lot of these were from bare root. I took some plants, I dug them up from the wild, from the neighbors along their fence rows, and we bought others from nurseries. So we actually got 4, maybe 5 different varieties out here.
Okay.
And we wanted to do that because they say the different varieties actually cross-pollinate and give you better yield.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right. And how long has this particular plant been in this space?
this is a 3-year-old plant.
Okay.
When they get to be 4 or 5 years old, they're pretty much mature and they'll be 8 foot tall.
Okay. And how long can a bush like this produce? I mean, will they last for decades, or?
They slowly die off and they send up new shoots, pretty much like quackgrass. They kind of have rhizomes that come up, and if I don't keep a moat in between, they will just fill this in, and I have one solid hedge.
Okay, so pretty hardy and self-sustaining.
Yes.
That's great. Any special care? Do you have to prune elderberries?
So far I haven't done much of anything, other than if there's any been dead or broken stuff, I just prune it out.
Okay.
And just we'll put that in the compost pile. And that's pretty much been it. They're pretty easy maintenance.
Easy maintenance, that sounds great. Now, if we look, there's a difference here between the berries.
Yep.
Some are very green and some are getting this beautiful kind of magenta color. How close to being ripe is this bunch right here?
This bunch has probably got another week or 2 weeks before it'll be that really purple.
Okay, so it needs to get a little deeper in color.
Almost purplish black in color when you pick them.
Okay.
So.
And that's usually in the middle of August when that happens?
Yeah, that's
in
typically
a normal
middle
season,
of August, and they will start ripening in August, and there might be some out here yet flowering, and all the way through to about the end of October I can be picking ripe berries.
Okay, so you just come along and pick the ripe berries. It isn't like you go through the whole bush at one time?
No, I come out with the clippers and a 5-gallon pail, and I just clip the clumps that are ripe, and once I got a full pail, I just go put them in the freezer so they freeze, because it's easier to harvest them when they're frozen versus when they're fresh. Because there's all these little stems on each berry,
right?
And they get shattered mixed with the berries. If they're frozen, those just shatter free, and then I can screen them out, so I get a lot less stems in whatever I'm doing.
Great, makes sense. In terms of care, you said kind of maintenance-wise, they're very carefree. Do you need to fertilize at all, or do you put any compost down on your rows?
I haven't put anything out here yet for them. I have, for the lawn on each side, I have spread some weed and feed to help keep the weeds down. So that does have some nutrients in there for them, but I've been trying to keep that at a bare minimum too.
Right, and you're just mowing. So
I'm just mowing,
yep. That works as well. Now, are elderberries, are they native to Minnesota?
Yes. Yeah, well, native actually to pretty much all of the U.S.
Okay.
There's several different species of them. So the Native Americans survived with centuries for them. They'd harvest them and make them into syrups and eat the berries as well.
And can you eat the berries? I've often heard they're a little tart.
They are tart.
Okay.
So a lot of times you want to cook them down or sweeten them up before you make them into jams, jellies, juices, wine, anything. So.
All right.
But a lot of the plant is edible. The stems were actually used for arrows, for the bows.
Oh, is that right?
They were made into flutes. Some parts of the plants were supposedly medicinal. I don't know much about that.
Okay.
But there's enough on the internet where studies have been done. But for the most part, I'm just harvesting the berries to make wine.
Sounds great. Well, in a minute, Bruce is going to show us how he makes that wine, but right now we're going to head out to Oronoco and visit a beautiful place with a giant pond in the backyard. I think you'll really enjoy it. We'll be right back. We're going to check out the Oronoco garden. Kim, thank you so much for inviting us to come out to your place. This is just gorgeous.
You're very welcome.
You've really done a ton of work here. What inspired you to landscape your property? Because I'm sure it didn't look a thing like this when you started.
No, it was pretty much, we had a lot of mature trees, fortunately, when we moved in. We moved in about 20 years ago. And I just am an avid gardener, always have been. Love to be outside, love to enjoy the outdoors. So really what we did is we started actually landscaping just around the house. And then I decided, well, I want a butterfly garden, and I want a fern garden.
Okay.
And there's more shade gardens, and I always obviously wanted a vegetable garden as well.
Right.
So just kind of continued to expand the gardens, and kind of really we looked to what I think one of the main things that inspired us was getting rid of trying to mow around trees. So we were getting rid of grass, right? And that, basically beautifying our yard and just making it, also makes it more consumable for wildlife as well. We have a lot of native plants that are very, very good for wildlife, for like berries for the birds and the butterflies and such.
Great.
For all the nectar. We also, then what we did actually in 2007, we decided, we had the pond behind us here years ago, but we decided we wanted a big pond. And this used to be basically kind of where we're looking at, almost where the rocks are, was really where the woods started.
Okay.
And so that used to all be woods, but there was a depression there, and so we thought, hey, this would be a great location for a pond.
And that is just the signature feature in this backyard.
Thank
It is
you.
enormous.
Thank you.
It is just
Thank
enormous.
you.
You've got some beautiful, I'm assuming those are lily pads?
There's actually a combination. It's lily pads and then floating hearts.
Okay.
All the ones that are actually the yellow blooms are actually called floating hearts, and then the others there's lilies kind of sprinkled throughout the pond.
All right. I just love all the different plants that you've put in this pond. What are some of the ones that you've used? You've got a beautiful big wide-leafed one with deep burgundy stems. You've got some that almost looks like grass. What's that one?
There's actually sweet flag, and it's very, very prolific, as you can see. We just had a few plants that we put in, and they just continue to spread and naturalize
So it kind of
throughout the pond.
I don't want to say self-seeds. Is it by seed or do they run new
It's
roots?
by rhizomes, actually.
rhizomes,
So you'll just see the rhizomes in the water, and they kind of just continue to branch out.
To spread out.
And we also have some cardinal flower in, and we have forget-me-nots
Okay.
and some poppy mallows as well.
Looks great. Is there any particular care that you need to do with the pond throughout the season? I mean, in terms of water quality, or I see you've got fish in there. Do you have to feed the fish? I mean, what kind of care is required in a pond?
Basically, with the fish, you don't want to feed them when the temperature is below 50 degrees.
Okay.
Otherwise, they stop metabolism, they can actually die. So we basically just feed them in the summer, the spring, summer, and the early fall. And then in the winter, they just go into the deeper parts of the pond, and they end up just basically going dormant.
Kind of
and they kind of hibernate. And we don't do anything else with the fish other than we just feed them and let them kind of go roam around and do their thing.
Sure.
As far as the actual maintenance of the pond, this is one of our lowest maintenance portions of our garden.
Oh, really? Okay.
We
That's
actually
nice.
we have a bog system. Actually, you'll see that there are two streams here.
Yes,
so
I
there's
love
a bog
that
up
there's
here,
water coming in from
and then
both
there's a bog down there, and on the other end.
On the other side. Now, I think of bogs as being big, swampy spaces. That isn't what these look like at all.
No.
So
not
what's
at
the
all.
purpose of the bog?
Basically, the whole purpose of the bog is to help clarify your water.
Okay.
So what it does is it provides surface structure. So underneath, under the overflow area behind the pond is where we have two pump towers sitting underneath that big flat rock that's a waterfall rock.
Okay.
And those, each pump will pump, one pump pumps to one bog, one pump pumps to the other bog.
Okay.
And the way the bog is structured is underneath the bog is PVC tubing with holes drilled in it. So the water gets delivered to the bottom of the bog, and then you plant plants in the bog.
So it
and you
percolates
have
up?
correct. And that's the trick with everything, is making sure that you actually have the plants out of their pots. and actually have the roots directly in your bogs and also in your pond.
Right.
Because then the good thing about a bog is as the water comes in, it's delivering the nutrients to the root system.
Okay.
Because it comes to the bottom of the bog and it filters it
Builds
up.
those plants.
And the other thing that's really nice about the bogs that we actually didn't realize when we designed them and put them in is how wonderful it is for the birds. The birds love to actually get in them and take a lot of baths.
Oh, is that
so
right?
that works very, very well.
Well, one of the features that you've incorporated is a vegetable garden in this beautiful space, and it fits right in.
Oh, thank you.
So I'd love it if you show me the working end of the garden.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, your garden looks fantastic. No one would know that we had a late spring out here in your garden. You've got some pepper plants here that are looking wonderful. Your red cabbage looks great. This is terrific. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the size of those potatoes.
They've kind of gone crazy this year. It's wonderful to see.
They really have. So you've got a nice variety here, and you've got some really tall cages that you've developed
Very
for
sturdy,
your
yes.
tomatoes. What kind of tomatoes do you grow?
Actually, just a real variety of tomatoes. A lot more of the tomatoes that we grow tend to be more for canning.
Okay.
I tend to do a lot of tomato sauce and a lot
Okay.
of chili. So more kind of your paste, but we also have some that just put in salads
For
and
fresh.
just to enjoy as well.
Sounds great. Brussels sprouts, right?
Absolutely,
That you've got
absolutely.
going?
Love those.
Looks great. So what other things do you have out here in the garden that you grow? Because you've got quite a bit of space here.
We also have eggplants down here in the end. We have a cabbage, and we have cauliflower and broccoli. I have carrots. I have zucchini and onions.
A whole host of things. You've done a really nice job too of, I don't know if it was on purpose or if it's just spread by seed, but your oregano that surrounds the garden is beautiful and functional.
Thank you, thank you. It was on purpose to begin with, and this is kind of where it's been relegated over the years. This is where we allow it to live because it just kind of continues on year after year. So it's space that is allowed.
Great. And how nice to work out here with the sound of the
Very,
water
very wonderful.
feature. That's great. Do you do a lot of cooking?
Yes, absolutely. It's nice to actually be able to come on and get the fresh herbs from the garden.
And right close,
the fresh produce,
a lot of
exactly.
times the vegetable garden is relegated to the back corner because it's not nearly as attractive, and then you
Exactly.
have to walk ways, but it's right outside your back door.
Exactly.
Fits beautifully into your landscape.
Thank you.
Looks terrific.
Wonderful.
Looks terrific. Well, thank you so much, Kim,
You're
for
very
letting us come
welcome.
out. You have a beautiful garden, a wonderful
Thank you.
home. We've really enjoyed visiting it today.
Wonderful to be on the program.
Well, we're here up on the deck, and we're going to be taking a look at what it takes to actually make wine out of these beautiful berries. And this cluster is pretty close to being ripe.
Just about.
Just about. So, can I taste one?
You certainly may.
Do you want to taste one, or am I
To me,
on my
they're
own?
rather sour at this point.
They are, but not too bad, really. Not too bad. And the berries are very tiny, so it probably takes a ton of these to actually get any volume out of your wine. But let's walk through the steps. So you harvest them.
Yep, I'll harvest the berries, then I'll actually take them in buckets and I will freeze them. And then once they're frozen solid, I'll actually destem them. I'll just use them in my hands and I'll roll them.
And you roll them.
And,
all these little stems.
Yep, the berries will break from the stems and all the little fine hair-like stems will be in there. And then I'll use them with like a pan with a screen, and I'll actually put them in there
Just kinda sort
and
'em
I'll
out.
shake them around and destem it, and all the fine stems will fall out. Then I usually have to go to a larger pan with a mesh
Yep.
and shake them again, and then the berries fall out into another tray, and then the large stems
You
stay in
lose
there.
the bigger stems.
And I try getting as many of the stems out as I possibly can, and picking any leaves or bugs that show up in there as well.
Now it tastes like there's a seed in there on the
Yep,
inside.
there's
but
typically
those
two
don't come
seeds.
out right away.
No, they
Right.
don't come out right away. So After we have the berries destemmed,
Okay.
I'll actually thaw them out, and I just have a standard old apple press that you crank down and the two boards together and press out the juice out of it. But you don't want to press them too hard, because when you're talking about the seeds in these berries, there's actually 2 seeds in there, and there's a little oil skin or layer around the seeds.
Okay.
And if you press that too hard, you get too much of that oil out, and when it ferments making wine, it makes a foamy green sludge on top of the wine.
That doesn't sound very appealing.
It don't off-flavor the wine, but it really makes it hard to clean everything up because it's really sticky, like a sap.
All right, so squeeze, but not too hard.
Right. So then after I got the juice done, I actually pour the juice into this stainless steel pot.
Okay.
And it only takes about 3 pounds of berries to 5 pounds of berries crushed in juice, mixed with the sugar and the water and the
so you add
necessary,
water.
peptic enzyme, tannins, and yeast
different
to make a
ingredients.
gallon of wine. So I put all that in there. I fill it only about 2/3, 3/4 full.
Okay.
Because
Like
after
so.
you put the yeast in there, it will start foaming and kind of a small roll, like a rolling boil on its
Okay.
own, because it creates its heat
So it does all that fermenting
Yep.
in this pot, lid on?
with the lid on.
Okay.
Because you don't want any other wild yeasts or coming in to off flavor it.
Okay.
So, and that'll actually ferment for a whole week.
Okay.
And once it stops that rolling boil and everything, I usually let it sit a day or two to let any of the sediment drop out.
Right.
And from there, I'll actually just use a hose and siphon it
Siphon it?
from the stainless steel pot to a 5-gallon carboy. And that's what
Okay.
glass jugs this size are called. It's carboys.
Okay.
And from there, then I'll actually cork it with just a cork with a hole in it. And this is a gas trap. And you use sanitized water in there. And that allows the gas, as the wine still slowly ferments, to let the gas escape out, but it don't let any other moisture or air back into the
Right,
wine.
so you're not contaminating what's in that glass vessel.
Correct. Then after about 2 weeks, more stuff will keep settling out of the wine, and I'll actually siphon the wine again from this carboy into another one.
Okay, and the purpose for that is?
Just to get all the sediment out, so you get a nice,
Okay,
clear,
nice and clear.
wine.
Okay. So
And
it's almost like filtering it, but you're not running it through a filter, right?
No.
You're just siphoning it, but leaving the sludge on the bottom.
The sludge on the
Okay.
bottom. Then, you clean up the old carboy, then I sanitize them again. And you just keep that process up, and I'll do that 3 or 4 times
Okay.
over the next 2.5 months.
Okay.
And you could bottle the wine then, but I prefer to let it age another 6 to 9 months.
Okay, so 90 days is kind of the minimum?
That's kind of the minimum.
Okay, and you let it age longer because why?
That all the flavors blend together, because
Okay.
there'll be 25 bottles of wine in here. And if I let it sit almost a year, you have 25 bottles of wine that taste the same.
All the same.
All the same. Whereas if I bottled it right away, I end up with 25 bottles, and they all can have subtle taste
Might have
differences.
some variations. Okay.
So
All right.
you actually let it mellow, age, and gets a little smoother on its own. And when we bottle it, it's a rather simple process. This is just a corker.
Here's your bottle, just
And-
regular wine bottles. Where do you get these?
You can buy them at wine supply shops, or if you know old wineries, they don't reuse their bottles. They usually send them out back. You can talk to them.
Okay.
And always ask them first, and if they
Right.
can take them, and they usually let you do that.
This is a clear bottle. Is there a reason that you use clear as opposed to a colored bottle?
I'm colorblind.
Oh.
So I actually like enjoying seeing the colors when I can do it.
Okay.
But typically, wines are actually better off in green bottles and in clear bottles. The darker the bottle, the longer the wine will last, because the sun, or the UV, deteriorates the wine and shortens the life.
Okay.
So,
right.
but with mine, I keep them in clear bottles. They're stored in the basement in a dark
they're in the
room,
dark.
kept around 60 degrees. And our fruit wines so far have been lasting 5 to 6 years.
Oh, nice.
And normal, they only recommend fruit wines to last 3 years.
Okay.
So
And why is that? How is a fruit wine different than a grape wine?
grape wine has a lot more tannins and everything in it, and it will last 100 to 200 years. Whereas fruit wines, they only said 3 to 4 years. Well, I'm getting them last 6 years. And a lot
So
of
that's
that,
pretty good.
that has to do with how sanitary you are for keeping things clean, how I'm aging it, how I'm keeping it in the dark. So if you can keep your wines out of indirect light, preferably even in a closed cabinet, a dark one,
Right.
and keep it around 60 degrees, they will last
They will last longer.
far longer.
Okay.
So actually then once this has aged my year, I'll use the same siphon system again, hose, and I'll siphon it from the 5-gallon bottle down into the liter bottles. And once it's full, it's a very simple thing. You just put the bottle in there and it's spring loaded. You put a cork in there, and when you press it down in by the lever, you end up, you know, with a bottle of wine with a cork in.
Beautiful.
And I actually use a pneumatic cork, which they say is a manufactured cork. It's not a true cork.
Okay.
And I do not know if they're better or not. Like everything, you
They
can read
last
it.
as long as you need them.
They last as long as I need them.
All right,
And-
very good. Well, we will be right back in a moment. We are going to now see what Chef Larson is doing with watermelon. Let's check it out.
Hi, I'm Chef Stephen Larson. Welcome to my kitchen at Quarter Quarter Restaurant in Harmony, Minnesota. You know, summertime brings watermelon, and who doesn't love watermelon? Today we're going to do 3 different preparations for watermelon that are rather unusual, but I think very delicious. The first one that I'm going to show you involves a balsamic syrup. So we've taken cubes of watermelon, and then I've taken a chopstick and just simply made a little depression in the top of each one. Now what that'll do is provide us a little well for the balsamic syrup. Now balsamic syrup, I've taken balsamic vinegar and sugar and just boiled them together until we get a syrup-like consistency. So we will take a little squirt bottle and we'll fill each one of these up so that we get this beautiful dot pattern and a delicious little well of that sweet yet slightly tart balsamic flavor. All right, so that finishes that up. And that dish is ready to go. You can serve that on a chilled platter, make sure it's nice and cold, and then people can just help themselves and pop the whole cube in their mouth. Very delicious. The second thing I'm going to show you is kind of a Spanish preparation using watermelon, which is in the cucurbit family, so it's related to squash and cucumbers and other vegetables like that. So it can be used in a slightly savory preparation. So here we have watermelon slices, and I've topped those with a very, very thin slice of Greek feta cheese. And then we're going to use some beautiful extra virgin olive oil and just very lightly drizzle the top of those with that olive oil. Again, very delicious, very unusual, and very wonderful preparation. The third thing is more of a Mexican style dish. Now, a lot of times for street food in Mexico, you'll see chilled fruit, especially mangoes and melons, sprinkled with some spicy peppers. So in this instance, I'm going to use ancho pepper. Now, ancho pepper is the main component in your garden variety chili powder, but this is the straight ancho pepper. It's very mild as far as spiciness goes, and it has a nice tart, sweet quality to it. So we're going to mix that with a bit of sugar and a sprinkle of salt, and we'll just give that a quick stir around. And then we'll give a nice sprinkle of that onto each one of these batons of watermelon that I've got cut here already. A little bit more. Make sure and use a goodly amount of this. And then to serve these, we put them onto bamboo skewers. So you can just put those right in the end there, and it's kind of like a chilled watermelon lollipop. Now, one of the things that you'll notice that I'm using here as far as the watermelon is I've got a seedless variety, which means really it's not seedless, but the seeds are very, very tiny and completely edible. They're not hard, so they're easy to chew. So you can either use that or you can use a regular style watermelon, but make sure and take the seeds out first so that you give your guests a pleasant eating experience. So there we have it. Watermelon, 3 different interesting ways, because there's nothing better than eating fresh from your garden.
Well, Bruce, now we're going to try the fruits of your labor. Love that sound. Oh, beautiful. Look at how pretty that is. That is gorgeous.
And once you try it, maybe you can try telling me what it tastes like.
Oh, you're going to test me, huh?
It has its own distinct flavor that you can't relate to any other fruit.
It's much smoother than the berry, I'll give you that.
Yes.
Beautiful. Would make a great dessert wine.
Actually, when we use it, we a lot of times eat it with salmon.
Okay.
And with like a very mild flavored cheese with like a dill bread too.
Oh, that would be good.
And we've also tried it with beef dishes.
Very nice.
So.
Well, you do good work. Thanks for
thank
sharing your expertise with us today.
Okay, well, thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time on Garden Connections.